All right. We are live. Welcome, guys. It's MadManPlant. We are here at SmokeBusters for honestly, I think it's our first long podcast of the year. We've done almost 55 this year, just in almost February to the March timeframe. But this is great because we love the digital side. We love talking to growers, and Organically Blunt was so nice enough to have us on his show. It's time we show him some love and get him on ours. So, welcome to the show, my dude.
Definitely. Thanks for having me. There's going to be some hiccups we're all going to experience when you start a show, and hey, you'll learn as you go. So we'll get her polished, and if I can help you with anything, I'm more than willing to lend a hand here. So definitely. I'm not sure where you want to begin with things. I'm Jay Blaze. I'm with the Organically Blunt podcast. It's a lifestyle podcast that surrounds itself around cannabis and the lifestyle that surrounds it. Everything from raising your kids and mental health all the way down to growing the plant. We dive into all types of categories and topics, and we share other people's story. And that's kind of a little bit about me.
Well, that's awesome. This podcast, just like similar to yours, focuses on that mental health, that homegrown aspect. So I guess we'll just dive into it. Do you want to do mental health first or mental health second compared to homegrowing?
Let's go with it second. Definitely.
All right, cool. So let's talk about your growing and how you got into homegrown in general and kind of what you do and what you bring to the table.
Well, it's got to start at the beginning. So definitely pull up a chair, roll one up, and get ready, folks. Here we go. It all started roughly in 2009. I was a medical cannabis patient in the state of Michigan. My parents had always grown cannabis all my life, and basically it was more of a hemp licensing in my family, but we got it far enough that in the state of Michigan I could grow for myself. So we started developing THC plants at home, and I started getting clones and was running into a lot of problems there. But I've always been an outdoor organic grower that did things very simply. I learned from my grandfather, and he did things as simple as, good topsoil that was locally sourced and good manure or compost that was also, very well sourced locally. And then, it went as far as, sorry, I'm trying to connect with the chat as well, guys. But definitely, we did everything locally. We would go to the lakes and we would catch fish and we'd bury them with our plants and make our own basically fish emulsion and amino acids, all from just the process of letting things break down on its own. And yeah, that's basically where that started. I started out with CFL bulbs, believe it or not, and in a thing that you would call a space bucket. And if you guys don't know what that is, definitely want to Google it. I started on a very small basis, and I started growing in 5-gallon buckets with 3-gallon pots. And I graduated from there to buying an 8-bulb T5 and got my first 5x5 tent. And I just continued to develop from there. But I've always been an outdoor grower. My prize grow, I would have to say, would be my 17.5-foot wedding cake, which you can see on our Instagram. I'm on a 16-foot ladder. It's way back in the thread. You'd have to search for it. Yeah, that was definitely my prize grow there and my biggest grow. And I've always been into kind of doing things organically, because the reason I'm a medical patient is I have alopecia. It's an autoimmune disease where your autoimmune system actually fights your hair follicles, and it causes your hair to fall out. And I needed good, clean medicine, and I wasn't trusting what was being offered in my small town locally. And I decided to take it amongst myself to produce my own medicine. And Yeah, definitely. We according to the chat, I'm just interacting a little bit here. 16 foot is kind of the normal for me. As weird as it sounds. 16, 17 foot, we usually have 1 to 4 of those every season. We had a couple of those last season. We're hoping to have a couple this season. I'm actually preparing for my outdoor here pretty soon, this couple weeks, but outside of that, I'm currently growing in a living soil 3x3 grassroots bed that everything is sourced locally here in Michigan. And we put it all together. I work with a company called Country Roots Soil and Amendments, and they do living soil, and everything is made right here by my best friend, Chris, that runs the company. And we basically break it down to make it easy for everybody. And that's what my whole goal of everything is I'm learning on the same process and trying to re-educate everybody during that process. So I'm not the smartest, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a professional grower, I'm a home grower just like everybody else. And that is how I portray myself. Is I'm going to ask the dumb questions because I know somebody else isn't, and there's no question that's going to be dumb. So let's get the answers out there and let's get the right information, because there's too much bro science on the internet and too much false information being spread that people that are getting new into it, they don't know which way to go. There's so many ways to grow this plant, and there's no way to grow it wrongly. But you also have to remember that there's fundamentals, and instead of running into them problems right off the bat, let's make it so you don't overwater. Let's make sure you understand how to do the feeding if you're using synthetic or living soil. Let's make sure you're re-amending your soil the correct way and reusing it so you're not spending money, because that's my biggest goal, is to be sustainable. And if you can save $1, save it where you will. And the reason I'm like that falls into the whole rest of the story that we're going to dive right into here. And that'll dive right into the mental health as a whole. And that is, just 3 years ago, coming up on April 13th, I was homeless. I was homeless for over 10 months. Prior to them 10 months is where the story all began. So 2019, everybody's building content. Everybody is basically, worried about COVID. We got the pandemic going on. Well, I was raised by my grandparents. Well, my grandmother passed away 9 years ago to open heart surgery. So I took care of my grandfather. He had cancer and dementia and Alzheimer's and a bunch of other things. And during the whole thing, he developed COVID and went to the hospital for 14 days for quarantine and came back home. I don't know if he signed himself out or what. Came home, and right around Christmas 3 years ago, 3 days before Christmas, I found my grandfather face down, blue, dead from COVID. Wow. I tried to do CPR. I tried to resuscitate, and I could not do it. And my grandparents raised me since I was a little kid. My biological parents, they were in the picture, but they were just too busy with life and everything else. Yeah. And they came in as power of attorney over the estate and did an estate sale while I was living in my own house. So I would come home from work and there would be people buying my TV, my couch right out of my living room, watching the motorhome go down the driveway. And you have no control over any of it. And
that's insane, dude. Wow.
Yeah. And then on top of that all, that steamrolled into them serving me an eviction notice in my own home. Yes, an eviction notice. And then they took and they sold the estate and drug everything out, and basically did not care about me. Well, my grandfather was an educator, and he believed in reteaching anything you could know, because why be stingy? You can't buy experience. And that is the biggest thing you guys got to remember. You cannot buy experience. So,
yep.
And, me and him stuck together and till the day. And then I moved on, after losing my house, I lived in my car for 10 months. And I went to Planet Fitness, and to shower, and I was a truck driver anyway, so I was used to living in the small quarters as it is, and it didn't bother me. But the biggest thing is you got to learn to keep that mental focus, and this is how I said it would come into mental. You got to keep that mental focus right. You're going to get in your head, and it's going to be a lot, and you got to learn how to stay balanced. And I started the podcast because of that.
So going into this, talk about that. Like, how does that internally feel? Like, what goes through your mind? Like, it's like almost like, how is this legal? You know what I mean? Like, how are you doing this? Like, it's like a void in the matrix. Like that's just like to imagine somebody just coming into your house and telling you that you have to leave your own house. Like the amount of like tell us how you felt. Like, what goes through your mind? How do you process that?
Well, your first step is you get defensive. You do, and you become. And I don't know if cussing's allowed. I'll try not to cuss. I'll try
the fuck you want, and we're gonna smoke here. So
okay, all right. So here we go. Here we go. I'm gonna keep it organically blunt, and I'm gonna tell you, I got aggressive. Like somebody protecting something that means everything to you, your property, your child, that type of, I guess you'd say, offense. It's a mechanism kicks in, and you're one of them people. You're like, this is my home. This is where I grew up. This is where I was raised. My family's was here. My memories. How are you going to take this from me? And that was how it was at first, and then it got to the point where it was basically, okay, I got to accept the fact and I got to get on my grind. And that's what I did is I saved literally every dollar I had come in, and I worked out of my car. Well, mind you, I was a truck driver, like I said. So I bought my contract from my company that owned me for paying for my schooling. They owned me for 3 years, and I paid cash for my loan that they wrote to me originally. And you work to pay your loan off, essentially, much a week. And I walked in there because I never made a lot of money. I've always been very frugal and very low income. And, I was used to living off of $300 a week, being honest with you. So like,
that's tough too.
Working and starting truck driving and coming fresh out of school and turning 60 to 70-hour weeks and making $1,000 was a lot. So, the first thing, as humble as I am and as crazy as it was, the first thing I bought was my work boots, which was cowboy boots. And I never owned a pair because I couldn't afford them. And then it got into the point, I went in there and I bought my contract out because my grandpa wasn't doing good health-wise. And I wanted to take care of him. And they laughed at me. And I didn't care. I walked right in there, man to man, face to face with the owner. And I put $4,300 cash on the table, and I told him I was done. You're not going to own me anymore. And I went independent contractor from there on out. I've been working for myself for the past 4 years. And I do roughly 63,000 miles a year, 63,000. And I'm on the road.
And you said the other day when we spoke, you were on the road 80 hours just this week, right?
Yep.
That's insane. Like, so going back to the eviction and everything going on, you living in your car, how do you maintain a positive mindset? Because I can tell you that, personally speaking, I'd be out for blood at that point. You know what I mean? Like I don't know, like if you come back from something like that, because I mean your whole world is now not yours anymore.
Well, for me, like I said, I was a truck driver, so I was used to it. So basically, I'm used to that tiny house, small living. Yeah. And I actually prefer it. And my house makes me very uncomfortable. And I know that sounds weird because I when you have a house, it's not a home unless it's filled with love. And let me put it that way. And the reason I say that is I bought this place. I paid cash for it. I saved every penny I had to buy a 3-bedroom, 2-bath place in a senior citizen housing community. I am in a senior citizen housing community. Yes, that is the crazy thing. Well, long story short, I to maintain that mental, I kept saying to myself, I'm gonna find a home. I'm gonna find a home.
Yeah.
That's what I did. But this isn't home anymore. This is just a house. This is a place I store my stuff, and this is literally my grow house. I put it that way, and where I sleep. That's it. Sleep and shower. And I'm never here because it's almost pointless to me to have a house because I could do the same thing in a car. But to keep that mental, I kind of just surrounded myself by the cannabis industry. My family turned their back on me. They kind of blame me for my grandfather's death on the other hand, so a lot of
that's shitty.
Yes. So a lot of that was very hard. It boils right down to the day he died. The state police came in and because he had his pills all over when he died because he was doing his medicine. And they had to interview me and make sure I didn't tamper with him or try to kill him by playing with medicine or giving him something. And when they did that, they had to go into the basement and they had to look into my grow tent. And the first thing the state police said, I will never forget it, is holy shit, that stuff stinks and you know what the fuck you're doing. That's what he said. And I was just laughed and I'm thinking in the back of my head, I do not want to go to jail for this shit, but I do have my medical card. And I that was the first time I had a major altercation with the law why I was growing legally. And it was just like, okay, they know what I'm doing now, so I can't hide that. And they literally zipped the tent back up and went on their way. And I tell you, it's like having a bullfrog in your throat. You don't know what you can't swallow. And that goes into all the other mental things, I tried living with one of my best friends of 36 years. After a while of living in my car, I went and moved in with him for a few months. And I started growing in them space buckets and growing in the closet. And he didn't like it because of the smell. And I didn't know anything about charcoal filters because I was not exposed to that. I come from a one blinking light town that is Amish based.
That's
so
funny.
Yeah. So everything is small town here, like very small town. I mean, my neighbors are Amish pretty much. And when you ask them about smoking, they call it a brown cigarette. That's what they call it around. Yep. And, it's an agricultural, horticultural area. And everybody grows it. So it's not a big deal in this area. It's normal. To walk down the street almost with it one hanging out of your mouth to the point that when you go other places, you almost feel offended because you're like, oh, I can't smoke here? Like, really? Like, okay. So, the mental part is the hardest. A lot of people ask me that every day, because prior to losing my parents, I went through a messy divorce. I lost my home that way, moved back home, took care of my parents, and then lost both of my parents, and then ended up on the streets, and then ended up having to start all back over again. The cannabis community is what happened to me that kept me mental. I met a couple people, but I knew a couple people anyway, and I come from a marketing background with a degree in marketing with a minor in graphic design. And I ran a company for many years called Michigan Evening Now that is no longer in business. I worked with places like NBC and Clear Channel, which is now iHeartRadio. I did a lot of freelance work for them. And I basically did entertainment, and I knew it kind of went hand in hand with cannabis. So I was like, I grow it. I can entertain people and educate. Why don't we do something to teach people the dumb questions that I'm asking and how to answer them? And my grandpa had the name way back then for Organically Blunt because unfortunately I'm kind of a cocky person that if I know what I'm talking about, I kind of am that way, and I'm blunt about it. Like, so that's who I am. And everybody's like, you would make a good talk person. And I'm like, okay, let's do this. And I started out on audio because of my alopecia. I had no facial hair 2 years ago. And I finally grew it back from hemp and doing different things with hemp. And I finally got back on in front of the microphone because another show called Talking Shit with Ego and the Mindo Dope Boys, which I met that summer at a show here in Michigan, pushed me over the edge to producing video. They said I had to do it. I just had to jump in front of the camera. And here I am today. I've got over 300 episodes. So
Well,
that's kind of how it rolled into everything.
well, let's tie into a group session real quick. You got something to light on real quick?
Oh yeah, definitely. Let's
And
go.
first of all, before we smoke real quick, you know, thank you for sharing your story. That is definitely a journey that not everybody can handle. And that's a situation that's totally uncalled for and just kind of, far left. It's like, what the fuck? So it's really cool to see that. And then to see you come out here and have the confidence, plus use your background, and all the radio and everything like that. That's what I tell people, is we're building value. We're creating that for ourselves by investing in ourselves, learning things, learning to live differently, be different. So let's smoke it up, my guys. Here we go.
Definitely. So, I mean, like I said, it's very hard for people to maintain a composure on that mental standpoint. I get approached daily about it. And, people just can't believe my story because that's literally just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more, you know, that I could dive into that I won't. But definitely, it's been a struggle. I lost just from COVID alone 16 people in 1 year. And yeah, a lot of my family passed, and there's not a lot of us left. I have nobody literally in my town that is related to me that is like intermediate family. Like, so it's been hard, and the cannabis community, like I said, it accepted me with open arms, and I started meeting people and going to all the events, and I uh I wanted to re-educate on other people's businesses too, So I started going to like all the workshops and the classes and learning different things. I filmed a whole class on how to make hash because from beginning to start, it's almost 2 hours long. And I just did it because I wanted to. That's my passion. I want to learn as much as I can because I'm a sponge for knowledge, and I just want to absorb as much as I can on any subject that has to do with the plant and the properties and the medicine behind it and the people and everything as a whole. I mean, mental health is big, and that is why we did a segment on that. Was because we wanted to touch on different real people, not just doctors or somebody in the medical field. So, I put together a panel and did a whole show on it because I wanted people from different aspects of life to touch on that. And, it's very hard to talk about myself because I'm so used to telling everybody else's story. So, like, I'm not used to this. So I'm trying to dive into it as much as I can here. So if there's any questions anybody has, don't hesitate to ask.
Yeah.
I'm
And
definitely.
well, I definitely have some questions. So as far as the growing side, what type of inputs are we using? What type of tent do you have? What type of setup? What are you putting in that
Sure,
garden?
sure. Right now, I wanted to kind of let the soil bake, so you say, and I lasagnaed out a 3x3 grassroots
Oh
bed
shit! Damn it!
and filled it full of soil from country roots. But I'll explain it and kind of break it down here how I did it. I started out and I collected river rock from the local hardware store or Menards, Lowe's, whatever you got local to you. I went and bought, 4 cubic feet of river rock, and I pre-washed it, got all the dust off it, put that in the bottom of the bed. Then I went and I bought, 4 to 8. I can't remember if it was 4 or 8, 4 to 8 cubic feet of lava rock, pre-washed all that, got all the dust off that, put that in there. Then me and Country Roots, he's a registered geologist. He went out and we went out on his farm and got fresh saplings of birch and other I think it was maple saplings, and put them twigs in there. And then we filled it with his fresh earthworm castings and layered that. And then we went into his blend of soil that he has, the grow blend. And then I topped it with a little bit of Build a Soil 3.0 blend. And we put in the Fast Bud genetics because I just wanted to do some autos and get a fast harvest off the rip. And I'm doing the RC Cola, the Blue Dream. And then I'm also doing a couple from Atlas Seed Company, the Fruit by the Foot, because I work with both them companies and help promote their genetics. I kind of wanted to stay true to the brands that I believe in. And Fast Buds has always treated me good, and they always have good quality genetics that do just that. They're fast. And that's what we got going right now in a Gorilla Grow 5x5 under a Kind LED X750. And the cool thing about that light is it has the built-in UV lights. So we'll be able to, as soon as we kick in the flower here, we're gonna kick on the UV too. And I've got it fully automated. I'm using a Blue Mat system. I built my own manifold and my own 12-gallon reservoir. Used a custom blend of clover and ryegrass, cover crops, and stuff like that. And basically no synthetics. I use no bottled nutrients, no bottled anything. The only thing bottled I would use on my grow, indoor or out now, because I want to know what I'm putting in my body. That is the biggest thing. Is the only thing that comes from a bottle is the Lost Close plant therapy that I use for an IPM. That is literally the only thing I use from a bottle. And that is organic as well, or at least mostly organic. And everything is starting to grow in great. And we're about 2 weeks in right now. And I got a couple that are lagging that didn't want to pop, but we got them to pop. I did everything directly. I germinated them in a shot glass of RO water with a little bit of what we call bokashi earth roots. Brandon Russ, he sent me a bottle of his microbe and stuff a while back, and I put a little bit of that in the water, a couple drops, and it has at it. We do it that way, and then once I get a tap root, it goes directly to the soil. And I'm controlled everything on the road by my AC Infinity 69 Pro, and I have their new fans. But other than that, I pretty much I hand water my Blue Mat system up to 42% every morning, and by evening it's tapered off to being sitting right at 32%, right where I want it. And that's where I keep everything. And it's pretty hands-on, but hands-off at the same time. Being on the road as much as I am, I like to monitor everything. So everything's got to be connected to something that has that capability. And unfortunately, the Kind LED didn't have that. And that's the one thing I didn't like about it. So I had to put it on a Wi-Fi switch. But they're supposed to be developing an add-on for the light here that's supposed to be coming out. I'm hoping so, because that is the biggest downfall. And I voiced my opinion on that. Somebody that's on the go, I want to know if my lights are on, and I want to know if they're off, and I want to know if the power's out, and I want to know if I got to rush home and turn on the generator, or anything like that, so it's pretty straightforward. Prior to that, I was very much into, and all my growing, I've always been into the simp setup, the wicking, the don't overwater your plant and don't water it. Let your plant determine how much it needs. And I was using cotton wick systems before AC Infinity even developed their simp or their hempy buckets or their self-watering bases or any of that. Like, I was doing that way back when Dude Grows was experimenting with it. And, that's where I learned it, was from them guys, Dude Grows. And I used to listen to them guys and Seed the Stone and Mr. Canuck and Mindo Dope and all them old school guys. And now I'm reaching out trying to get them on my show because they pioneered my knowledge, and it's only right to pay that respect to the people who paved the way for the rest of us. And that's kind of where I'm at with everything,
Yeah, and I think that's awesome. It's a way to connect that new age with that old school because they both have all their same values.
Definitely.
Nothing is forgotten and nothing is not important anymore. And I think that's the cool thing is, we can learn a lot, but we can also teach a lot. And by being growers in general, the biggest thing is getting your hands dirty, getting inside that garden and really learning the plant. Because just like with, dog training, it's not you getting the animal to work with you, it's getting you to work with the animal. Because at the end of the day, you're in control. So when you can steer that ship, you can pretty articulate that and then also bring in that culture in, it's a very powerful thing.
Definitely.
So with being on the road, how do you go? Because I'm a big fan of AC Infinity. As you can see, I'm wearing one of their hats.
Yeah,
They're also our silver sponsor on our tour. But how is going on the road? Because I'm sure a lot of people in here wonder what it's like. I mean, this guy, Organically Blunt, drove 80 hours this week in his truck, right?
Yep.
It's like, well, then how do you take care of your plants? You know what I mean? Like,
I am literally home roughly 6 to 8 hours a night, literally to sleep and shower, like I explained. And so my ritual is my lights go off at 1 p.m. here, 1 p.m.
Okay, cool.
And they come back on at 6 p.m. I run an 18/6 light schedule.
Yep.
And I run it that way because we have peak hours in Michigan where from 2 to 6 p.m., it is 1.5% the normal rate. So, or 1.5 times, sorry. So it's like triple almost. And so I've always had that maintained. So right when I get up in the morning, not to put a bad picture on anybody, fresh out of the shower, washed everything off your body. I walk in my grow in a towel or boxers with nothing else in, fresh. Nothing's on my skin, nothing's on my clothes. I can't carry anything into my grow. And I feed and I water then. I do my defoliation. I cut back my cover crops on a daily basis. Yes, a daily basis. I cut them cover crops back like it's grass. And that's what I do, And as far as feeding the microbes and everything, this grow, I have a feeling I'm not going to have to do a lot of feeding because it's going to absorb a lot of what's already built in the soil that we built up. But I did put some basalt in my soil. That is one thing. And I'm feeding micros WP from Extreme Gardening in my reservoir once a week just to kind of build that root zone. But other than that, I haven't fed at all yet because it hasn't showed me any signs of needing anything yet. And that's kind of how I grow. I let the plant speak to me. And the thing that I am learning is you're not feeding the plant. You're feeding the soil, which feeds the roots, that feeds the plant. It's all a big circle. Everything works together. So I've got over 500 worms in my garden. I have earthworms and red wigglers and all that stuff, and night crawlers, and all that stuff breaks down everything that in the soil. So it eats one thing, it shits it out. That shit feeds something else, and so on and so forth. And the plant takes it up what it needs. So you don't have to worry about burning your plants. You don't have to worry about any of that. The plant literally takes what it needs. And being that it's in a big bed like that, you have a buffer. And I personally don't pH because I have a big enough buffer that it don't affect my plants enough. But I have pH'd and I haven't seen as big of a difference in the beds. So I kind of haven't wasted my time on that, to be honest with you. And not saying that other people wouldn't have to, but my water fresh out the tap sits at about 230 ppm. And if I run it through the RO, I can get it down to about 16. But then I strip it of everything, and then I got to put it back in. And with living soil, you don't want to do that. You don't want to strip your water because your soil has enough life in it that it's going to need some of that stuff, and it's a big enough buffer. But, everybody has their own way of doing things. And I'm reading this comment here. I have both the X750 and X450 failed me mid-flower. They shipped me a new driver. Oh, yeah, they have good customer service. They've always taken care of me at Kind LED. I've had this light for 2 years now. Honestly, I got it right when it first came out, and I did a run with it. And then I worked with HLG. I worked with HLG and Kind LED. And I like the HLG personally myself, but I wish, and now they do, I wished at the time HLG came out with a bar light. And now I haven't been updated because I haven't talked to them in a while, but last I knew they were working on one. I don't know if they released it yet, but I was hoping to get my hands on that one next. I like to try different things and see how it works. But the HLG, I like that setup because they have a GrowFlux controller that I can control everything, and I can even do dusk to dawn or sunrise.
Yeah, we had the growth flux as well, and I really like that. And not to lose you on the roots, I definitely do you use Hygrozyme?
I don't.
Hygrozyme is one of our sponsors, but what's cool about them is Hygrozyme itself is an enzyme. So you have like your cellulose and your cellulose, or cellulose and cellulose, which cellulose is the dead material coming off the root zone. So like all that material that's dying, and cellulose is that enzyme that's inside Hygrozyme that eats at that and removes that and helps with healthy living. So that's specifically designed for the root. So like root health, stimulation, all that. And then with the HygroBen, that's a micro beneficial. And much like you were saying, which you're 100% accurate on, is you are feeding the soil. And that beneficial, what that does is, like with the difference between like the synthetic and the living soil, for most people that don't know, is when you feed synthetic, that input is getting taken up right away. So there's no delay. That plant is going to uptake that immediately. When you do organic, there's going to be a breakdown period because the soil has to break down the nutrient into a chemical form that the plant then can uptake. So there's that's why you're waiting, a little bit longer. That's why in living soil, in my opinion, I feel like it's a little bit harder to fuck up because you have that delay period, not getting that concentrated rate all at once. But that beneficial feeds that soil and it helps with the uptake. So it's taking those nutrients up faster. So that's what those two items do. But they're really good. And what's cool with them is they go with any nutrient input. So I like it personally, but I do, and I wanted to point that out, is you're so right. Is remember, you're feeding the soil. And like you with living soil, I don't pH either.
Right.
Now, cocoa, I've been kind of like dabbling with because I've heard people that said they don't in cocoa, and I'm like, well, then maybe we're good,
right?
So, and for everybody saying what's up earlier, what's going on, my dude? Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt them, but I'm glad everybody's here.
Definitely. Cheers, everybody. I'm sorry, I'm not messing with the chat a whole lot here.
That's okay, dude. I'm just glad you're here.
Yeah, definitely.
I spilled, I don't know if you saw, but I spilled all my weed that I
I
grounded up.
thought you did. I was like, oh
I was
shit.
like, we're going to do a commercial.
Now you know the trick to getting that now, don't you?
It's the sock in the vacuum.
You got it. I was just gonna say that old trick, man. A lot of people don't know that trick, and
Luckily, as a grower, I got plenty more. So, it's kind of, that's the one thing about, I love growing weed. It's like, oh, fuck, I fucked up, or I'm going to smoke a lot today. And it's like, back in the day, see, unlike a lot of people, I don't really have a legacy with growing. So,
sure.
I'm a new age grower. So, 3 years ago, essentially 2020, November is when I started. So
Wow.
mine is literally out of that bedroom, and then now we got some tents around the house for the AC Infinity thing. But with that being said, a lot of my experiences have kind of all been on my own. That's why, coming and talking to you, somebody that's done outdoor, somebody that understands these things is so great because you can teach our audience and we can, like I said, we learn from each other. There's things that I know that you don't, and vice versa, and how we
Right.
interact with each other. And plus, to see the diversity of the type of grow, because, growing is not one of those things where all grows are equal. You have
No.
times that you're dealing with pests, times that you're dealing with nutrients, times that you're dealing with just the plant itself, the environment, all these different things. So, and then you're looking at genetics and how they play a role and all these things. And then it all comes back to my mind where I'm just like, and they call us like stoners in a derogatory way. Like we're the dumb ones here, putting all this effort and all this love into this. So it's just cool. I love talking garden.
Definitely. And I'm gonna even dabble into outside of cannabis this season. I didn't do it for a long time, but I want to get into doing some gardening and show you guys some of that stuff. This weekend, I will. Chris from Country Roots is going to be teaching a gardening planning class at one of the local hydroponic stores, and I'll be covering that. And then in May, we're going to be doing a full foraging 2-day event and showing everything from how to do cloning, how to germinate, how to do standard gardening practices, how to reuse your soil, how to do earthworms. I mean, it's so much education, and I'm working with him because he's teaching me so much. And you can almost not pay for that type of education because it's going to cost you an arm and a leg if you find it. And for somebody to willing to teach that, it's been great. So I'm taking all that education and I'm just recycling it back to the community because I want to put it in front of everybody. And definitely smoke stash time, but it's been a lot of influence from a lot of different people that have kind of formed this ball of wax that I want to include everything in. Now, I'm only a soil guy. I'm only a flower guy. I don't do concentrate. I don't do wax. I don't do any of that. I do if I go to an event and one of my people I trust hands me a Puffco. Yeah, that's what it's called. A
Yeah, I
Puffco.
got Puffcos.
Yeah. Or I think the other one was a Future or something like that or something. I forget the name of it. But them are the only ways I consume it because I had personally a bad experience with dabs. My brother had gotten it so hot that I literally vomited in the sink because I couldn't breathe. And I
Oh,
was like,
that's normal. That's fucking normal. Yeah, anybody will tell you that sometimes you have to go like this and you're trying to catch your breath after the good dab. That is totally fucking normal. That means you got fucked up.
oh, yeah, we did.
Kind, yeah, guys. You guys are ready for that smoke session. Crimson, yep. But yeah, dude, that's totally normal.
Yep. So I'm strictly flour for now, but I learned how to make hash and I kind of like doing that. And we want to work on doing some more hash classes and stuff like that. Definitely. But my grandfather was a hash maker. That's how he consumed it, was hash in a pipe, or very weirdly, he would do things with the flower. I'm talking, taking like actual tobacco leaves that we grew in the backyard and drying them out and rolling them in honey and bourbon and letting them dry out and then rolling your flower into it. Um, it was very unique and very weird, like you don't see things like that, but that was his old school, that's how he liked it. And I'm fortunate to have some of his seeds after he passed that have been around for a long time that I probably won't pop just because of the nostalgic of it. I have some seeds from 1979 White Widow. I'm talking the original White Widows. And I have some of that, and I have some 1981. He marked right on it the years, 1981 Northern Lights, but I don't think I'll ever germinate them. They just mean too much to me to want to grow them. But it's definitely I'm a collector of phenos. I have binders full of phenos, like people would have baseball cards. And the biggest thing for me is trying to figure out what to grow next, because you got all these people that want you to grow their seeds and you don't want to upset nobody, but you can only get so many harvests a year. And it's like, well, who's next, So I do a lot of it outdoors.
Here we go. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, everybody, let's do this. Oh shit!
Now I can. I'm just gonna babble on here. If you have any questions, just ask. But what is some of your guys' first strains? Comment in the chat here. What is the first strain you guys tried? Do you remember?
Pineapple Express, because it was nostalgic.
Okay, mine was
Labs.
Okay, mine was Grease Monkey and Chocolope and Blue Dream. And Chocolope is one of the hardest ones to grow. I will never grow that one again. Chocolate strains are so hard for me to grow.
Granddaddy Purple.
Oh yeah, that's one of my favorites. Granddaddy.
Let's see. Darren says Sweet Tooth.
Definitely.
Sour Diesel. Mexican brick seed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know what really irritates me? I had a bunch of seeds that I saved from all the times that I used to buy weed back in the day, since 2023 forward. And my friend was like, oh, because bro science, and we talked a little bit about this earlier, it was like, oh, well, those seeds are light, in color. They're not going to pop. So I flushed them all. And now I'm like, you are a dumbass. You had no clue what the fuck you were talking about. What is wrong with you?
Oh, I still got mine. I got all mine. I got a whole jar. It's like one of them big wax jars, airtight, and I have it in my closet. And I probably have, I don't know, 200-300 seeds in this thing, and I don't know what none of them are. But if anybody ever asks me for free seeds, I mean, outside of my sponsors, like just people like, hey, can I get this? Can I get that? That bug me. I give them a couple of them, and they think they have the word in their hands. But hey, I don't know what you're going to end up with, but it might be good. It might not. Definitely.
Well, that's the thing. It's all a gamble. And that's why, sometimes when I do find seeds, depending on even, some people are like, oh, well, if you find like dispos, weeds from the dispensaries, they're not going to be good. And I was like, well, maybe I'll just try one of these days, just like one of those random bag seeds. Because literally, I have like a whole tub.
Oh, wow.
Seeds, probably like close to like maybe 1,000 seeds, right?
Yep.
Or more, honestly. And half of them are in vials or plastic bags with no name, no information. They were just given to me at an event. And one of these days, I'm like, you know what? Just set one of the tents up and do a mystery, and who knows what the fuck will happen.
Definitely. You know, I've had some that turned into mutants, believe it or not. You know, I had one where the leaves totally changed out. Yeah, speaking of freak show, I'll touch on that, Crimson. I've worked with Nat and Humboldt for a few seasons now. I had him on the show, and he sent me some because he sent me the original Freak Show and the Super Freaks because I live in a senior housing community, and I'm like, you know, and this was before I had a friend that let me use his land to grow my outdoor because I lost my family's farm where I used to grow. And he's like, grow these outdoors. Nobody will know. And he did not lie until we got into flower and people were like, man, there's a lot of skunks around here. And I got this veteran that lives behind me. And he's like, that ain't skunk, that's pot. And I'm like, oh shit, here we go. But nobody ever knew. But I tell you what, they are fun to grow. They really are, but they don't produce a strong flower if you're looking for that. And they don't produce a whole lot, but they're fun to play with, and they definitely keep it, you know, discreet. And I'll be doing another one this year, but this year I'm going to do it in a 20-gallon grow bag and see what I can produce outside. So it'll be fun.
Yeah, James says he likes doing that random stuff. You know what I was thinking? He's like, shit, dude, all of them have money. He's like, you could help them make a connection and sell them all seeds, get them all hooked up with some AC Infinity stuff. You got everybody 55 years old and growing. They all got money. They all got good shit. We're good business. Like, you know.
Definitely. But the problem is with the senior citizens that and this is a great episode. I haven't done it yet. And if anybody wants to run with the idea, go with it. I'll run with it myself. But, you know, is senior citizens and cannabis and the education behind it. So these senior citizens are under the education mostly that it's just like a prescription now. They can go down to like Meijer or Walmart or whatever you have, your local store is called, you know, Costco, I don't know, wherever there's a pharmacy in your area, Walgreens, and they can just pick it up, but they don't need a prescription. But they don't realize is a lot of that stuff is remediated. And what these grow shops do here in our area, because I have over 17 just in my town, it's ridiculous. We don't need that many. But long story short,
how many of those dispensaries use local growers?
Two micro grow licenses that I work with in town. That's the only two I support. And I know them personally, and I know that their hands are into the plant as well. Yep. And that's it.
Thing is the pharmaceutical or commercial version of cannabis. And I think the values in craft. And that's where the love and the passion and everything is.
Yeah, because the senior citizens are green thumbs and they could grow excellent. I mean, look at their gardens and their plants, but they have no education on the actual cannabis plant hardly, other than it was illegal and it was banished all their life. And
Colonial Beach.
And people basically, you know, they look at it as wrong, and now that it's becoming legal, it's almost like going through a second prohibition. And a lot of these people don't have the education of what's behind it. I mean, like I said, a lot of these grow stores here, they're paying they'll get a crop, they'll send it to the lab, it'll get rejected, and then they'll remediate that same crop for $10,000 and put it on the shelf without even looking at it. I mean, is it safe? I don't know.
Well, okay, so to talk about remediation with weed, because I happen to know a very little bit about it.
So I only know a little bit too, and from my understanding, it's a form of radiation, which we don't need that anyway.
So that is a way, but Willow Industries, who's actually one of our friends and has been on our podcast multiple times. We'll see them next week in NECAN. We'll be out in Boston. They use CO2 to do it, and they actually found that the Canatrol is a perfect unit to maintain. But what they do is they go into facilities all the time, and they're looking at microcolonies, and these microcolonies can multiply by the millions within weeks, like lots. And what they do is they use CO2, not radiation, because they agree with you it's harmful, and you wouldn't want radioactive weed smoking that and putting that in your body.
Right.
A woman who's the owner of the company, she's very conscious about health and all of this. Very great company, but they go in and they look at these colonies, and yeah, they see a lot of stuff that's not good in that. And I think you're seeing, because it's not a heavily regulated market,
Right.
even Oklahoma just had, I think, a bill or something passed where they're going to crack down on regulations as far as dispensary goes, and where this weed is coming from, and what is it, and who is it from, because I think one of the frustrating things for me as a grower, and probably a lot of people in here will agree with me, is the fact that you grow weed. So we're looking at genetics, we're looking at profiles, terps,
Yep.
strain, all this stuff, right? And then we go to the dispensaries, and that's not the value. The value is the name brand. But the stuff that they're putting on the shelf that says cookies is not the shit that I grew up my house with that was named cookies. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like,
Yep.
where's this coming from? Who's making this? And then you talk to the quote unquote bud tenders, and they're as good as people who are on their first day of working at Home Depot. And they're like, oh, I don't know the breeder, or we don't know the crosses or any of this. And it's like you start to see, like, we were in Arizona, and it's like we're looking around, and then I'm like, oh, hey, I recognize that name. Oh, I don't know that breeder. I'm thinking this, that, and I'm seeing this and something else, and it throws me off. It's like, well, who's growing the shit that I'm growing? Because I know a bunch of people on Instagram are growing what I'm growing. You know what I mean? I see what
Right.
people are putting in their gardens, but when I see go to the dispensaries, I don't see that flower there.
Never. No. None of the names ever match what's in these stores. And if they do, it ain't even nothing compared to the real thing. I think a lot of that is a marketing bait and switch. And what that is they're naming it something popular because they know it's going to move, but it doesn't even relate to the actual
Yeah.
strain that it wants to portray.
Like, I got this, right? This is like cookies, and this is from a dispensary. And like I said, it was like, it's very dense and dry and very
Yep.
very smooth rock like, and it's just like I have just like a little bit left, but you can just see like how compact it is. And then I look at my bud, and I look at it, and like, this is like a flat profile. Like, I mean, this has flat sides to it, pretty smooth. And I look at my weed, and I see leafy, an actual nug, part of a leaf, not this like mushed down composite bullshit, whatever. Dispo is hyped up mids. Yep, definitely agree with that.
Yeah, I don't know what prices are where you're at, but our price is tanked out down here to where you can get an ounce for $35. I mean, and I'm not saying it's good, but that's what they're going for out here. I mean, it is oversaturated the market so much that, and it's all garbage. I mean, now it's to the point that they're actually promoting shake and selling ounces of shake too on top of just flour, and it's like, that ain't no good for anything but maybe some edibles if you're lucky. So like, oh, it's terrible. And there's no medical. When it first started, we would go in there and the medical was decent. There's no medical no more. It's all just the recreational market took over, and it don't matter if you have your card or not. You're not going to get a better discount. The only discount you get, and they don't even ask for your card, so you don't get it anymore, is you're supposed to get a better tax cut, but they don't do that. They don't even ask you if you have your card, because anybody over the age of 21 here can walk in and pick up the 7 ounces on their person and transport it home. That's what we're allowed to carry here in Michigan is 7 ounces.
He said cookies is all right sometimes. Well, personally, I grew the lemon cherry pop, and that was amazing. Homegrown for me. Today, I think we both die. I think we both agree on that one.
Definitely, homegrown is where it's at. You know what you're putting into your product, and if you want to overstress your plant and try to make it purple, you can do it. You don't have to say, oh, what did they use to turn that purple? Or because believe it or not, and a lot of people don't believe this neither, but I seen it, and I know people that work at them dispensaries that tell me things. When you go in and you go to smell that jar that you squeeze or whatever, or some places let you smell it. Not a lot of places here do. Most places here, you're buying it blind. Believe it or not, you don't know what you got until you get in the car, and you're buying it off a picture or a name.
Yep.
But they spray it with liquid terpenes to give it a smell every couple hours. But the stuff you're getting is not going to even be close to that. They're just hooking you in, and they are also, some places are dyeing what they call their showpieces to give them more of a greener tint or more of a purple tint. Believe it or not, and you wouldn't think people would do something like that, but I'm finding more and more about this stuff on a daily basis, and it blows my mind just as much as it is blowing my mind to talk about it. I mean, it's like, wow, like you're really trying to hide a shit product by wrapping it in a fancy package, and that's basically what it is these stores are about the packaging. It's not about the product. It's about how the package is portrayed, and you're buying the package or the name because they want to hit it nostalgically. They want to hit on something that reminisces with you as a person, so you'll buy it. When in the end, everybody's basically buying it for numbers here. I mean, the only number they're caring about is THC percentage. And to be honest with you, some of the best flower I smoked was like 13% because it had good terpene flavor and it didn't taste like I was sucking on a permanent marker. I mean, but each to their own. I like it strong too, but sometimes it's good to have some flavor behind it. And if you don't have, you can't get that at the dispos as much. We've tried everything from $35 to the $2.25 an ounce stuff. And yeah, it looks prettier and it's better trimmed, but it's not any better, honestly. You can grow the stuff in your house for a lot better. And I mean, my grow personally cost me an extra $50 on the electric bill a month, and I'm producing enough for a couple months. I mean, you look at it that way, you're coming out ahead, way ahead. And you just got to be able to hone that skill in and figure out what works for you. And, what works for me in Michigan might not work for somebody in Arizona. The humidity is going to be different, your environment. And that's why you got to just kind of dive in and figure out how to get your own hands dirty and what works for you. Everybody has their own way. I tried DWC for a while. I didn't like that. My 3 strains for indoor. Okay. I would have to say my favorite strain that I've grown so far is from Barney's Farm, and that was an Orange Punch Mimosa. And I love that. That was probably the best one I've ever grown. Secondly, I would have to say would be my Granddaddy Perp, and then my third would be my Blue Dream, because I don't use pharmaceuticals at all. So when I have a headache, because I have what they call cluster headache sinus syndrome.
I know what that is.
I get sinus headaches like people get migraines. So bad that I passed out. I blacked out.
Do you do oxygen?
No, I don't do oxygen. I have a bunch of other things I do. But
helps with that microdosing.
Yeah, I know. I just haven't gotten that far yet. A lot of people have told me that. A lot of people. But
Well,
what I
there's a documentary about it, but go on.
okay. Yeah, I just haven't took the plunge because I am ADHD and I just don't know how it's I haven't gotten that far yet. But anyway, so I got into growing Blue Dream, and that is my Tylenol. And if it gets worse to the point that it's pounding, I jump on the Granddaddy Purple, and that's what I use. Like literally, I would put a jar of that in my medicine cabinet, and if I get a headache, it's ready to go. Like them are my three. You know, I like the mimosa strains a lot, but this season I'm leaning more towards the fruity strains on my outdoor, and I'm going a lot of fast genetics. I'm going mostly fast genetics this year because in Michigan, right around October, we get a lot of rain and a lot of wind, and it
Yeah,
always turns out no matter what. I don't care how good you take care of it, you're going to end up with some bud rot or some PM one way or another on at least one of your plants. And
yeah,
I don't want to deal with that. So if I can finish a month early and still have a great crop and I get all my crop versus maybe 80% of my crop because 20 of it went bad, I would rather have 100% early and have less than 80% of more. And that's just how I see it this year. So we're working with Atlas, we're working with Seedsman, we're working with Humboldt Seed. I'm going to be growing their triploid outdoor here in Michigan, and we're going to document how that goes. I want to see what that can produce here, and I want to see how mold resilient it's going to be here. I want to see how the PM is going to act with it, here. And a lot of these plants, I don't do a lot of training on it because I want to see how it's naturally going to grow, and I report it back to the breeder. So I want to I might top once or twice if I'm lucky and low stress train, but I don't do more than that. I really don't. I like to build manifolds out of my plants and kind of widen them out.
yep. Oh yeah, low stress training, high stress training, scrogging.
Yep.
Yeah, oh, yeah, we do a lot of that. We used to push clips heavy, and we still do. The power of turning the plant into a bush,
Yep.
and the fact that you could take that main stem and then redirect that and make many main stems, and this actually allows the plant to become more stronger and more vigorous than it honestly ever could be.
Definitely. And if you get the plant big enough, believe it or not, the stalks will start to produce a bark like texture.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like a tree, and most people don't ever get the chance to see that because their plant never gets that big. But I'm telling you, yeah, what would you like to know, James, about the freak show? I can dive into anything you want to know about that as far as what I've done with it. It's definitely a very finicky plant off the start. If you don't have your soil dialed in, you can burn it easily. I've had that issue, but it's not strong. When I say it's not strong, I would compare the bud to something on the mid level, honestly, because it develops, but it's not a big producer, and it's definitely not one of those that I would be growing if you're looking for yield or even a lot of flavor. It's more of like you're doing it for the experience. You're not necessarily
Yeah.
doing it for much else. And that's what I do it for. But I do it to actually have some yield off it because it gives me something in case my other ones get chopped, because we deal with that in Michigan. That's why you never tell anybody where your grow is, because you can't trust anybody. I've never been a victim of it because I don't tell anybody. Only me and one other person know where it's at besides my
You still
soil
don't
account.
tell anybody, but you're like, but one other person.
Yeah, but the person owns the property, so that's the one key to my thing is
Okay, okay, that might be fair. You might want him to know. You might.
right. Yep. And that's it. And and he gets 50% of the harvest, so I make it fair with him, so he gets hands off. I don't have to pay nothing to lease at the land anymore. I give him half, he gets his medicine, I get mine, and it's great. But yeah, definitely. As far as the triploids go, I'm not 100% educated on it. I just know it was like all the fad and everybody was jumping on it. And so I hit Nat up, and he was like, I literally have 3 seeds left. I'm sending them to you. And I was like, okay, we're going to do it outdoor. Everybody's been doing it indoor. Let's see what it does outdoor. I mean, he did it outdoor, but that's out in the Humboldt. Let's see what it does out here. So that's kind of where I'm at with it, and I'm going to learn about it. I'm actually meaning to get some time off to go look at, like Rob from CLTV and them guys, they did a video on it, and I just haven't had a chance to sit down and watch it and hear about it. And I know High Again's messing with it, and Basement Grows, and everybody else. So it's kind of like, I wanted to see what I could do with it, so I'm not saying, like I said, I'm not comparing myself apple to oranges or nothing like that. I'm just doing it for the experience and the report back to Nat that, hey, this is what it does in Michigan outdoors, Yeah, that's where I'm at with it. Yep.
Dude, that's awesome. It's cool that they have the diversity, and you are right about the plant growing to a tree. I mean, when you're outdoor, you have an unlimited root zone where those roots can really dive deep.
Definitely.
The root zone really is your plant, and that's why it's so important, like hygrozyme and all that. And honestly, dude, you need to look more at a high shield, which simulates the attack on the root zone, which helps that immune system, and it also helps yield. You use crustacean shells.
Okay.
So it's pretty cool. But definitely check that out because they're a great company, and that'll really help because you're at the mercy of anything. Deer,
it's everything.
Mold, everything.
Yep. I've had deer. I actually had to put up a deer fence last year because I had a beautiful plant, and it was from Humboldt, and everybody was like, "Oh, that's going to turn out wonderful," and then the deer ate it. They just ate the shit out of it, and I was just like, "Oh, what am I going to do?" And I can't put up 16-foot fences. Deer can jump; they can clear some shit. Let me tell you, I've seen it firsthand. And so I just put up a regular, like what they call a snow fence, and the deer didn't mess with it. I got lucky that deered them, but the farmer that I grow on, he grows a food plot for the deer literally right next to where we grow the plants. So like he's baiting the deer into our plants. And I'm like, oh shit, what are we gonna do? But as far as the fruit belt in Michigan here, so our growing season, I like to tell people, is from June 1st to October 1st. Now, not saying I haven't grown longer than that. I've grown from June 1st to December 1st and produced a 17.5-foot wedding cake from Barney's Farm that you guys can go back on my Instagram and go look at, that I'm standing on a ladder with. That was my biggest plant.
Awesome.
But the secret is I knew nothing about transplanting at the time. So what I did is I had it in a cheap Amazon grow bag, and I started it in March indoors, and I brought it out June 1st and put it in the ground. But I buried the whole damn grow bag plant in the ground, and it turned out that big. But I did do some low stress training, kind of made it Christmas tree wider, and that thing went so big that it started breaking over, and we had to put 2x4s in the ground and build a cage like you see Mendo Dope do with their microphone ones and all that. Like I literally reached out to them guys for all my advice on how to grow that.
That's awesome. I love the community jumping in like that and being like, "Oh yeah, dude, we do this all the time. Here you go."
Yep, and they walked me through how to keep it alive and everything, and they literally responded to me. That's what started the relationship with them guys and becoming a friendship is because, you know, I didn't know what to do, and I bought their DVD, and the experience was terrible. I will be honest with you on buying the DVD, because they were just getting them put on the DVDs, but they were only putting them on the Blu-ray, and I didn't have a Blu-ray player, and I asked them specifically special ordered for a regular DVD. Well, things happened and they couldn't get it to produce, and they lost the whole file and the mix, and
I know how that goes.
they were like, what can we do to make it right by you? And they personally reached out to me, and I'm like, just help me grow this plant. And they helped me. And, you know, I learned everything from them, honestly. And it was massive, like to the point that I was on a ladder just to work with it. And when I say it's cool and it's impressive, yes, but you get to a point and it becomes cumbersome. It becomes problematic. You're trying to apply IPM, and now every time you want to go apply IPM, you got to pull a ladder out and climb up it to get it on the plant, and it's not no fun, you know, because you could do it from the ground with a good sprayer. We've done it, but then you got drift, and how do you know it's all getting on the plant? You really don't. And you know, them guys walked me through all that stuff and taught me, and they discussed it this season, and we discussed it. Anything over 10 foot is just too much. You're better off going wide instead of tall, because it's a lot easier to work with. It really is. And that's straight from the field. You know, out here we have sun-grown competitions, and we put on a full Thanksgiving dinner every December, and everybody brings their outdoor, and we do a full sun-grown competition and a full Thanksgiving dinner where even the hogs were fed cannabis leaves from a friend of mine that has a hog farm. So everything is grass and organic fed all the way down to the meat we're eating at the event. So we do a lot of cool things up here. That's why I was saying the other day, when you come to Michigan, then there's a lot of cool things that a lot of people don't know that we do up here, you know. And it's literally the emerald mitten, as I heard somebody say yesterday. They're like, you're in the emerald mitten, and we really are. You couldn't ask for better soil up here. The only downfall is we have winter and we have rain and wind. But if you can grow in Michigan or even Humboldt, really, you can pretty much grow almost anywhere that's going to give you a major problem on the wet side or the windy side. I'm not saying like Arizona, dry heat or humidity, but definitely as far as elements go, you have all of them. Michigan can have 4 seasons in the same week. I'm not lying to you.
That's awesome. Well, hey, listen, it's getting late and I want to wrap this up, but I definitely want to have you back on. You know, I really appreciate your story and everything that you've talked about, you know, your trials of success, your dark days, you know, that really takes a really special person. And I really appreciate you being that person and really, you know, sharing that with the community, because this platform is for people like you who have a story, who need that story heard, so people can, you know, vibe with that and not only help somebody, but let other people know that they're not alone. Because I think a lot of times, especially in that situation yourself, you probably felt like you were really alone, like, you know, and you really question. I'm sure, at least I would, in my own opinion, I would have been questioning life and a lot of different things and you know, a lot of different shit. So I'm really glad that there's a smile on your face and that you're here with us and that you're just so full of positivity and that you are organically blunt with people, because it really pays to just be truthful. I think it helps more people to just be honest with like how you feel and what you're going through, versus to just like to put on a facade and just go through the motion anyways, you know?
Right. Yep.
So,
And I have my days, you know. You might notice on my Instagram that I might not post something on a Monday. I might be having a day, but I'm still going to try to produce something for the community, because I can't let them days get me down, you know. And the biggest thing anybody's got to remember, and I'll leave it on this note, is if you get in your head, even if you got to speak to yourself out loud and people think you're crazy, get it out, vent. And if not, always, always find somebody willing to listen, because just 2 weeks ago I buried a good. I watched a friend of mine from California that was from Michigan. He went to California to escape fentanyl, and he couldn't get away from it, and he got a bad trip, and they considered it suicide. He died the day before he was supposed to come back home.
Wow.
And a week later we were having his funeral. So, you know, if you have any mental problems, don't get in your head. Let somebody listen to you, because it's going to relieve a lot more than you think. Even if they can't relate, getting it off your chest is a lot better than holding it in. Definitely.
Yeah, and I definitely we had this little banner quote here, and I definitely want to express my sincere condolences to you and your friend. And my childhood friend, his name was John Spargo, and when we were young, we spent a lot of time together. We were inseparable, like best friends. And as he got older, we separated due to different just mindsets and different things with our life. Anyways, he didn't die from suicide, but he did die from an overdose behind a dumpster. Now, the person that he died as, I didn't know. So he was apparently a really messed up person towards the end of his life, and did some really bad shit. But the person I knew was the person I grew up with, in elementary and middle school. So I got to see the real version of, who he was. And I think same thing with mental health, with addiction and thinking and life. You can toxify yourself just like the drugs that you would put into your body with
Definitely.
the thoughts that you do. And this is nothing organic. I get it, but it says, somebody in a quote says, you put a lock on your door, you have a password to your phone, you lock your car when you walk away from it. How come the things that you're allowing in and out of your mind, your body, your spirit don't have a lock on it? How do you not have a lock on that? The things that matter the most, which are us. And I'm not perfect either. I have days where I hate the world, and I'm fed up, and I'm sick of it, and I'm not a happy person, and I'm not very positive. And I kind of have to eat my own medicine, and it's very difficult. And life in general is tough.
Oh yeah.
But I think the idea is we are all much more powerful on the inside than we believe. And you've experienced that power.
Definitely.
And have overcome that, and you're a great definition of that, and that's why it's so great to have you on the podcast, because you sharing your story can do, you can move mountains with that story, and I really hope you do. So how can we follow you, and how can we support you?
You can find us on all audio platforms and YouTube, Instagram at Organically Blunt, all one word. You can find us on Twitter or X at Organic Blunt Pod, I think it is, or something like that. You'll find us. I don't use it other than the stream, our live stream, so I don't do a whole lot there. The best way to connect with me is on Instagram. You can find me at jblazeob. That is my Instagram, or at Organically Blunt. I run everything you see in front of you. I'm a one-man show, so you're going to get an answer from me, and nobody else is me. So you ain't going to have to worry about any impersonations there. And we do shows weekly. It's not really scheduled because I try to fit other people's schedule. So just make sure you're subscribed to YouTube so you know when we do the next live stream. And with that being said, everybody stay organically blunt and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Guys, I thank you so much. And without the audience and you guys watching, this would mean nothing. And I really appreciate you guys taking the hour and 24 minutes to sit here with us. And I have a lot of great things coming up. Next week, we're in Boston. I want to thank all the sponsors. For silver, we have AC Infinity and Simple Solvents. For bronze, Hydrozyme, No Clone Left Behind, and Good Luck Stuff Productions. But next week, we'll be in Boston telling stories with our big booth. So make sure you check us out. Please follow our dear friend, Organically Blunt. Support him, like his podcast. He's doing wonderful things. He's a very hard worker. And we will see you guys very, very soon. And I wish I had an outro, but I don't. So soon it'll be something fancy that we'll end with. But for now, like my business coach says, bye bye for now.